In a year's time, Britain will leave the EU, and to mark that, we have a series of reports this week on the impact it will have on Scotland. Tonight, we're hearing the views of different sections of society. In a moment, EU nationals who live and work here tell us of their hopes and fears. But first, what do the people of Scotland think? As a country, we voted to remain, while the UK as a whole chose to leave. But does that paint the whole picture? Our reporter Stephen Godden has been getting views of the people from Moray to Morningside.
A spring morning at Lossiemouth Harbour. Its days as a busy fishing port are now in the past, a memory that for some was decisive when it came to the EU referendum.
My family from Lossiemouth, we're all fishermen, and you go down now and there's not a fishing boat really to be seen. I couldn't, in all conscience, no matter what other political views I hold, I could not vote for anything but Brexit because of that.
But in the same family, a different view about Brexit.
The only thing I'm worried about is change. You know, is it going to be a massive change? Is it going to be not much of a change? It's the same with, I suppose it's a risk, just like everything, isn't it?
Home to an RAF base, Lossiemouth in 2018 is more associated with the sky than the sea. The votes here helped shape a referendum contest in Moray that was closer than anywhere else in Scotland. The margin of victory for Remain was 122 votes. 18 months on, and both sides of the Brexit argument can easily be found.
Kind of confirmed what I already was thinking, that Britain needs to move forward and that we just need to stand for ourselves and be the nation that we used to be back in the 1940s.
I don't like uncertainty, and for me, I like to know what I'm doing tomorrow, what I'm doing the next day, and it's that uncertainty that has got me a bit wobbly, and as we're getting closer and closer to that deadline, that uncertainty is still there.
The long journey from the Jewel of Moray to Edinburgh reveals the other end of the spectrum. In a city that overwhelmingly chose to stay in the EU, Morningside had the highest percentage of Remain voters.
I want to be the first hippo on Remain.
In the library, locals offer their take on how the Brexit story is unfolding.
I'm much more hardened against Brexit now than I was a year ago. I wasn't happy then, and I'm certainly not happy now.
Because of the uncertainty, I would really like to see at least another referendum, and possibly, if not a referendum, maybe better, would be a free vote in Parliament.
Out on the street, a different take.
It's a massive divorce that's actually taking forever, and it shouldn't take this long. This is people, this is money, we're still spending a lot of money. But again, I don't even know what's going to happen when we leave, if it's going to benefit us. My girls say we should be staying in it, and I actually believe that we should be leaving it because it's not benefited the local people.
Edinburgh and Lossiemouth were chosen for their positions at opposing ends of the voting spectrum in the EU referendum. But there is nothing scientific about this journey. What it offers is a snapshot of opinion as the Brexit clock continues to count down. Stephen Godden, reporting Scotland.
Well, as Stephen said, that's a snapshot of the views of some Scottish people. But how about those who've come here to live and work from EU countries? Fiona Stalker has been finding out what they think.
Ready?
You safe?
Yeah. Which colour should I do?
Off you go.
Anna is Hungarian. She's scaling heights at this climbing centre in Aberdeen before heading to her bar job. She's lived, worked and studied here for almost 10 years.
It's difficult to go slowly.
Anna's in a rush to get to the top of the wall, but with all the uncertainty of a Brexit, she's in no hurry to persuade fellow Hungarians to join her in Scotland.
I spent all of my adult life in Scotland, so I think they wouldn't kick me out. but actually, when originally my friends were planning to move here, we were a bit worried that if they were coming here around now, they wouldn't be able to settle.
How many covers do we have for tonight?
We've got 70 with 9 in the private dining room, so it'll be good.
Many of those from European countries who have settled end up working in hospitality.
Sweet corn and chicken soup.
Thank you. If you're out in a cafe or restaurant for a coffee or a bowl of soup, there's a fair chance that your food or drink has been prepared by or served by an EU national.
Oana is from Romania. She came to live and work here 4 years ago.
I'm not worried not because I'm oblivious to the situation. It's a case of I'll deal with it when you'll be here. I don't want to think of something because there's so much uncertainty, and you're basically walking on unknown territory with it. It's like putting your finger on a trigger and you don't know what's going to come out of the gun barrel.
That uncertainty appears to be impacting on businesses already. The hospitality, food and farming sectors are concerned about seasonal workers. In higher education, there are fears about attracting staff and students. And the construction industry has seen skilled staff returning home. Some firms in Scotland are staffed entirely by European migrants.
Do you think Brexit will affect your life?
Actually, not my life. I didn't see any different yet, so we will see.
What is certain is there will continue to be speculation and debate over what Brexit will actually mean. But what's equally as certain is some people just aren't thinking that far ahead.
What are your plans for the future?
I don't have plans now.
Just about today?
Yeah, just today and tomorrow.
Fiona Stalker, reporting Scotland, Aberdeen.
Thank you.
And tomorrow our political editor Brian Taylor will be looking at how Brexit has revived the debate about Scotland's future and the possibility of a second independence referendum.
Now for the latest in our series, marking a year to go until Britain leaves the European Union. Scotland, of course, voted to stay in the EU in contrast to England. The referendum has prompted a revived debate about Scotland's future. This from our political editor, Brian Taylor.
Oh, of course, there's the Brave Hills over there.
Meet the Walkers for Yes, off for a hike to explore Edinburgh and to convert anyone they meet. They say Brexit demands an early second referendum on independence.
One this year would be good because of all the shambles of Westminster.
I think we've got to seize the moment when the United Kingdom was weak.
But here at Holyrood there's a note of caution. Yes, Scotland voted to remain within the European Union, and so arguably that might trigger a second independence referendum to allow Scots to choose their own way. But what if Brexit has created a climate of fear which in itself deters Scots from choosing independence?
What's been happening while I've been away?
Former SNP Minister Alex Neil takes that view. He says delay a referendum for at least 3 years and use the time to demand new, devolved powers and to finalise answers to key independence questions, like the currency.
We have got to inject much more certainty into the debate on our side the next time. Now, clearly, since the Brexit result, the big issue has been uncertainty. Uncertainty on the outcome of Brexit, uncertainty on what the final deal will be, uncertainty on the transition period. So another dose of uncertainty at this stage would actually work against the independence side in another referendum if we hold it too quickly.
The writer and commentator Darren McGarvey says it's important to make a clear distinction between Brexit and independence.
If we're going to push forward with the argument for Scottish independence, the whole argument needs to change. The whole gradient at which we enter the debate needs to change in recognition, one, that the last time it didn't work, and two, that the circumstances are, as many have said, are materially different.
Nicola Sturgeon has now parked the question until Brexit is clearer. But in March last year, she demanded an independence referendum. Some supporters thought yes. Others?
There was lots of people going, oh no, again, could we do this again, you know, because of the energy and time and all of that it took. There were many people within the movement going, yes, let's go.
Elaine C. Smith chairs the Independence Convention. She stresses its right to Carcanny. And she insists all the energy is still there in the campaign, but she acknowledges a potential problem with delays.
I think if you leave it too long, then that fire, that great mobilising that happened within the wider independence movement throughout Scotland, you don't want that to be crushed or fed up or just fade away.
As to numbers, the SNP lost ground in last year's UK general election, although they remain Scotland's largest party. A few polls just after the EU referendum suggested a lead for yes on the independence question, but most polls now suggest no. But the Walkers for yes aren't deterred.
As regards the timing, I think there'll be a sweet spot. I think it has to be soon, but I think we have to feel our way for the sweet spot, a bit like in Braveheart, where he says, wait, and then you go.
Brian Taylor, reporting Scotland.
All this week, we've been looking at the impact of Brexit on Scotland with just 1 year to go. It's something that will impact all our lives. So tonight, we're looking at some of the issues at home and away. First, we're heading to the Sun, where Scots who now live abroad are considering what the future holds. Rebecca Curran joins us now from Benidorm. Rebecca.
Yes, Jackie, well, it's a complicated picture here. While initial concerns about pensions and healthcare have been addressed for some, others are worried about freedom of movement and the impact that Brexit might have on their business. And then on the other side, I've spoken to many people over here who are very much in the category of we'll take it as it comes. They say that if and when issues arise, that's when they will deal with them. One interesting claim that I've heard over here is that house sales to people in the UK have risen, and that might be because they're rushing to buy before the UK leaves. So with a year to go, is Brexit changing people's plans for a place in the sun?
Costa Blanca with promise of sunshine 300 days a year, sandy beaches and breakfast served all day long. It's easy to see why people like Stuart Riggins have settled here.
I think we come over here, I was only 15 maybe when I come over here. Come over for a mum went a new life and a better life for 2 kids, and since then decided to stay here due to the better life for my daughter as well. Can I get a Zach?
3 generations of Stuart's family moved here from Paisley and still have unanswered questions about Brexit.
With respect to if I was ever to move back home, any kind of guarantees that the door would still be open as such, and what it would mean also particularly for my daughter as well, yeah, back here for schooling, etc.
Hi there, what can I get you?
Karen's been out here for 5 years, but as yet hasn't applied for permanent residency.
Yeah, I'm not currently resident at the moment. I work here legally, I have my employment number, but it will change now due to Brexit. It's got to, you know, if we want to stay, then it's got to be residency and be legal.
Well, Brexit's obviously something we've had to cover a lot ever since the referendum.
Headline news both at home and abroad. This journalist thinks some people are still unprepared with 1 year to go.
I think a lot of people have tried to wing it and they haven't done their research. There's something like 300,000 officially registered. There's probably somewhere between that and 800,000 living here. One of the other problems is that there are people called swallows who spend half the time in the UK and half the time here trying to chase the good weather.
Further down the road in Quesada, others feel ready for Brexit. Even though he voted Remain,
just pass a chain check, hurry away.
This bike shop owner has been quick to adapt.
Since Brexit kicked in, we've started to buy less bikes from the UK due to the fact the bikes have went up in value. They're charging us more for the same bike. So we're now buying more Spanish bikes. So we buy 80% of our bikes from Spain now and 20% from the UK, whereas it used to be 100% from the UK.
So no exams on the last day?
No exams.
But this English language teacher thinks her business will suffer.
My real and immediate concerns about Brexit on my business are that British teachers are going to lose their freedom of movement. So they're not going to be able to come here to work as quickly and as easily and as inexpensively as they can do now, and that is going to impact a lot on my flexibility as a business.
While the tourist season on Costa Blanca isn't yet underway, residents and businesses seem confident that holidaymakers will continue to chase the sun, sea and fun on these shores.
Well, as you heard in my report there, some people come here and they choose not to register, and it's those people that the British Embassy in Spain is now reaching out to. They say that the top priority for Scots living here should be to make sure they have all their documentation in order if they want to maintain services like healthcare and also their pensions before we leave next year. And they're being very proactive about spreading that message. There have been dozens of roadshows across Spain over the past year, and many more are planned, and during them they're encouraging people both to register and also asking about any concerns they have with a year to go.
Thank you, Rebecca. Well, here there are concerns about how Brexit will impact on the food industry. Scottish farmers' leaders today put forward their proposals, notably what should replace the Common Agricultural Policy and the subsidies that come from it. They're concerned because in England, the Rural Affairs Department, DEFRA, has put forward its thoughts on the future. But there's been much less progress in Scotland. Our Rural Affairs correspondent Kevin Keane can tell us more.
First steps for this newborn lamb and for a new agricultural policy for Scotland. With nothing on the table so far from the Scottish Government, NFU Scotland is on the front foot with proposals of its own. It suggests a long-term shift away from basic payments towards ones earned through environmental or social measures. But farming leaders want the speed of that change determined by the rate of success in international trade deals.
The vast majority of our members realise that there does need to be a change, but that change needs to be a managed change. It can't be a cliff edge, it can't be chaotic, because agriculture, farming and cropping couldn't stand that, particularly in Scotland.
The UK government has already published a broad plan for England, but the farming landscape is very different north of the border. Just take a look at this landscape. It's heathery, it's mountainous, and there are limits to what can be farmed here. Livestock, one of the few areas of productivity that can be gained from this land. In fact, 85% of Scotland's farmed area is classed as less favoured, and the document emphasises the additional support that's needed in those areas. The proposal document was discussed privately with the Rural Affairs Secretary Fergus Ewing, but he declined our request for an interview. Outside, opposition parties united in supporting NFU Scotland's view that it's filling a vacuum in farming policy.
I have challenged Fergus Ewing on several occasions to come forward with a plan for Scottish agriculture post-Brexit, and he has given us nothing.
That's something that both the UK and the Scottish Government are lacking in doing themselves. They're effectively having a vacuum filled by the National Farmers Union. We need to see an awful lot more detail coming from both the UK and the Scottish Government.
Fergus Ewing says he can't make decisions until there's more clarification on areas like funding from the UK government, an issue he says is causing frustration for him and his Welsh counterpart. Kevin Keane reporting, Scotland, Perthshire.
Gin, that's what we need in the run-up to Brexit. Well, that may be, but it's foremost in the mind of Edinburgh-based Pickering's Gin. They're an example of the many export businesses keen to know what our future trade relationship will be. Our political correspondent Andrew Kerr paid them a visit.
So here are our two stills, Emily and Gertrude.
It's Scotland's white gold. Whisky may be our biggest export, but there's growing demand for Scottish gin right across the world. This is Edinburgh's first gin distillery in 150 years.
We make 70% of the UK's gin in Scotland. A lot of the big brands are here, but us kind of smaller craft guys, we're kind of doing our bit.
They export to 16 countries, but with a year to go, Brexit is on the horizon.
The thing for us is long-term planning, and all we really want to know as a business is exactly what's going to happen. Once we know what's going to happen, we can plan for it.
So to distill the facts you're hearing about Brexit, this is how the EU works just now. We're in the EU Customs Union. Goods move freely across the borders. The same level of duty applies to goods coming in from outside. We're also in the single market, an even deeper form of integration. Goods move freely, but there are also strict rules that apply to products like gin, maintaining and protecting quality. Services, investment and, controversially, people also move freely in a single market.
Well, it makes life very easy for us. So, if we're exporting a product, it gets exported into Europe and there's no problem, there's no hold up in customs, there's no delay with paperwork. For instance, when we export to China, there must be 15 forms that have to be filled.
And before dispatch, time for the finishing touch.
So Robin, just tell me what you're doing here.
So each Pickering's bottle is hand waxed and we can do up to 1,200 a day. So yeah, we're all really good at it by now.
The distillery is built on the site of an old brewery here in Edinburgh, and it's quite a production line. These bottles will be enjoyed by people right around the world. So this has got quite a long way to go, doesn't it?
Yes, it certainly has.
So where are you off to first?
back to Glasgow, then it gets shipped onto another trailer over on the ferry over to Europe.
This is the gin's journey to Austria. We'll pick up with the brand in Vienna tomorrow and see how Britain might work after Brexit. The hope is that after the transition, the gin will continue to flow freely. Andrew Kerr, reporting Scotland, Edinburgh.
And as he said, tomorrow Andrew will be reporting live from Vienna.
When we leave the EU, some things will stay much the same, at least for a couple of years. During the so-called Brexit implementation period, UK citizens will still be able to move to EU countries to live and work and vice versa. But longer term, the rules will depend on whatever immigration policy the UK adopts. Some people are trying to avoid potential restrictions by applying for second passports in EU countries, as our political correspondent Glenn Campbell has been finding out.
We're hurtling towards departure from the EU, and it's not yet clear how Brexit will affect our ability to travel, to live, work or study in any EU country. Martin McGrath doesn't want to rely on UK papers. He's applying for a second passport.
So what do you have to do to get this passport?
Well, the first thing I would need a birth certificate from my grandmother.
As his granny was born in Ireland, he should qualify for Irish citizenship and the EU rights that come with that.
I will have freedom of travel throughout my adult life, no matter what happens. But I will be an EU citizen, and I will have an EU passport no matter what happens in the negotiations.
So it's like an insurance policy?
Basically, yeah.
They teach 14 different languages at the centre in Glasgow. But the boss is worried Brexit will make it harder to find staff.
We have had a huge decline in applications for positions, and I think now with the uncertainty, they might just choose to go elsewhere, because in Europe they can go anywhere.
Having been born in Germany, Michelle is now seeking German citizenship for herself and her children, Leon and Ruby.
I hope they remain as free as they can be, that they can move and they can choose where to live, where to work, where to be further educated, who to fall in love with, and not be trapped on an island that has decided to be on its own.
I spent most of my life in Canada.
But Antoni Kozlowski is half Polish. He was born in Scotland and decided to retire here.
To be closer to my family in Poland, and sort of 3 years after we came back, they pulled this Brexit stunt on us.
Antoni's determined to get a Polish passport.
Why is it so important to you?
So that I can feel solidarity with the concept of a peaceful Europe. But more important, on a selfish basis, just so that I have the freedom to go and visit my family when I feel like it, and in a way that is convenient to me.
Of course, the UK and EU could agree to retain visa-free travel for visitors, and the final Brexit deal from 2020 could prove more flexible than some fear.
But if you want to live, work or study in an EU country, then you can't assume that your right to do so will be automatic as it is now. And that's why some are applying for second passports to hold on to their rights as EU citizens. Glenn Campbell, reporting Scotland, Glasgow Airport.
Brexit will fundamentally change how Scotland does business with the rest of Europe and the world. We've been following the progress of Scottish gin as it's made and exported to the EU. Our political correspondent, Andrew Kerr, has traced the route to its final destination, and he's in the capital of Austria tonight. Andrew.
Sally, good evening from Vienna. We started with the gin distillation process in Edinburgh. It gets taken down to Dover, shipped across to Calais and ends up here in Austria. So we've been speaking to importers, sellers and expats to find out how they're facing up to Brexit with 1 year to go. Tourists love the grace and grandeur of Vienna. The locals love Scottish spirits.
The gin we saw being made in Edinburgh now sits on the importer's shelf after an easy journey through the EU.
It means we buy a product as if it was produced in Salzburg. It's very easy, transport-wise, documentation-wise.
Thomas sells on to this local shop. Whisky and Scottish gin line the shelves. Brexit may disturb the smooth flow of spirits from Scotland.
Switzerland is not in the European Union, so we import not so often. We're looking at first in other countries to get the product.
To avoid disruption, the Scottish Government argues the UK should remain in the single market and the customs union after Brexit. Labour wants a new and comprehensive customs union. The UK Government says they're leaving the single market and the customs union, aiming now for an ambitious free trade agreement. As night falls, time to enjoy the Scottish products at a top Viennese hotel. One British expat agrees with the UK Government view. He's got no love for the EU.
I think there are too many layers, it costs too much. I think there's a ton of corruption. And I think the average man in the street doesn't feel as if he's voted for these people.
Across town, in a very different venue, a very different view.
It's an absolute disaster. It's caused a lot of insecurity. People don't know where they are. People don't know how to plan.
This pop-up bar sells Scottish gin. The award-winning mixologist is worried about Brexit, but thinks it will be made to work.
The whole world, the whole bar industry relies on Scottish produce, and we actually don't want to stop working with those beautiful products, so we need them.
This British-built Ferris wheel has dominated the Viennese skyline for more than 120 years. Who knows how the Brexit wheel of fortune might spin for Scottish exporters and European importers. Andrew Kerr, reporting Scotland, Vienna.